Hey everybody, welcome back and happy Preakness week. We're going to be recording the Preakness video on Thursday. We'll record that early, waiting for the past performances to become official. I will be joined by Scott Shapiro, possibly a special guest, but you will have to wait for Thursday. Until then, let's look at the Black-Eyed Susan. This goes off as race 11 on Friday. Friday card is absolutely loaded. I've gone through all the stakes races. Tons of information at OptiCQ, lots of notes. If you guys haven't picked up the weekend package yet, consider that $50. That gets you full access Friday through Sunday, every track we're running, and of course, all this great stakes action from Pimlico. Looking at this race, this is the second leg of the Triple Crown, the Oaks version, Black-Eyed Susan, Grade 2, 9 furlongs in the dirt. And let's start off with the plot. Plot fit here is yellow. So what that means is we'll kind of have to look into the grid and just decide where these horses are, if they fit on the plot, or if we can kind of design a different trip for them. The contention is a sun. I think that's pretty fair considering we have 4 horses sitting in quadrant 1, the number 1, 2, 4, and 11. And we also have a pretty solid speed rating at 56. And again, you can see that both the 8, the 3 sitting above that par line, as well as the 5 and 7 to the left of the y-axis. So these are horses that sit somewhat close to the pace. Again, a length, 2 lengths back of the early pace setter. Are squares, so obviously they can close, but we should have a legit pace on this race. A little bit different than probably we're going to see in the Preakness, but we'll get to that on Thursday. I do want to look at Quadstat because I think there's some good information here just as far as where these winners are coming from. Obviously, you can see this bright green of quadrant 1 squares. Granted, we don't have any quadrant 1 squares. That was 3 races, 3 horses that were squares in quadrant 1. 2 of them are winners. By contrast, circles in quadrant 1, there's been 16 circles. Again, this is at standard for 9 furlongs on the dirt. 6.3%, that's only 1 winner in 16 circles in quadrant 1. So keep in mind that's not 16 races. Like, this is going to count for 4 horses, right, according to that sample. But I do think that is interesting. We'll look over at ROI and just kind of see if anything changes as far as that goes. Quadrant 3 squares light up very positive ROI, positive 228, and that's based on $1. Again, quadrant 1 circles minus 70. Also, reminder that 1 for 16 count. I just think that's kind of important as we sort of reference the grid. We want to have horses, obviously, squares again between being in quadrant 1 or quadrant 3. Horses that can finish are your most likely winners. So perhaps, one of these horses, we can look at them, make excuses for why they're circles, but that's something that we do want to look for as we go into horse by horse, a horse that can finish. So yeah, let's go through. Again, I'm doing this early. I don't have morning line odds, but we'll just get a lot of good information out of this and then fill in that information as it becomes official. The number 1 Shimmering Aspen, coming off last 2 races, B+ efforts, both at Laurel, so local horse, did have a perfect trip, made a move on her own without being asked. Last time out at Laurel, late April, made an easy lean loan, again, just did it all on her own. The projection is turf. I just noted that she's a filly that should be fine on turf as well. Obviously, she takes to the dirt, improving speed figures in every start. The biggest question with her, obviously, well, there's 2, but one being whether she's going to be able to handle the route. And going back and watching her, I was really kind of looking for any clues, and I'm just not sold one way or the other. I think that she can, but the fact that she's coming into this stake race trying a route for the first time is going to be a tall ask. I don't think it's impossible, but you do have that question in both situations is whether she's going to stack up against this type of competition and carry her speed around 2 turns. She definitely has speed. She's a gray. Her marking, she kind of reminds me of Unique Bella. So you guys that are Unique Bella fans, you might want to go back and watch her because she's kind of got the same type of running style. Not quite as headstrong, but does want to be on the lead. Pretty powerful. a neat filly, obviously lots of talent, still lightly raced. Again, you know, being a circle in quadrant one. You know, she has that 1 for 16 going for her with that contention and speed rating. Again, it's going to be a tough task. Let's move on to the number 2. She's another horse that's circle in quadrant 1. She has a little bit more foundation to her, racing at Woodbine and then came back off a layoff. Big effort at Tampa. Lone Trip, noted that she was a sprinter type, and I agree with that. I've gone back and kind of seen some of her efforts at Woodbine, just doing the work over at Woodbine the last couple weeks. Has that kind of sprinter build to her. She is going to be forwardly placed. She was against the flow with the Honeybee. I just don't think that, you know, 9 furlongs is going to do her any favors, especially looking at where she is on the plot with that contention and speed rating. Is probably going to be up against it. Those 2 inside horses both want to be forwardly placed, so that's going to help ensure that pace. Let's move on to the number 3. This is an interesting filly, and we'll kind of reference back to the plot as we go through her, because we can kind of maybe make a case that her shape's a little bit different. Started at Laurel. Grand Motion runs quite a few horses out here in Maryland Circuit. When she did break her maiden, again, keep in mind Laurel, 8 furlongs is a 1 turn. She was wide. This other just is suggesting that the top 2 horses in that field were just so far clear, much the best. Second place finisher is a nice filly. I think it's a Michael Matz filly, who's run some stake races out well. It might be that tequila something horse that ran in the Oaks. I'm sorry for butchering her name, but she ran a sneaky good effort. I believe that's who that filly is. But this Keeneland race here, the Alcibiades, is the race I want to sort of key off of. Grade 1 race where she earned a B+. Granted, it was a perfect pocket trip, but the fact that it's a B+ means that while she had that perfect trip, she did it more impressively than just kind of getting an average B. Oh, she got the perfect trip. And this is important. I'll sort of clear this out as we look through grid, just sort of do a class check of any of these horses that have run in a grade 1. And you can see that B+. Only a few horses have run in a grade 1, her running twice in a grade 1. That B+ really stands out. Summer Luck, who we'll get to because she does have an improve as we go through the field, but I think that B+ is strong, gives her a class edge here. We'll look through these last 2 races because I think this is sort of telling is why she's a circle in quadrant 2. Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, flow and no keep, but you can see she took a 155-day layoff following, so a little bit forgiving of that performance. You know, maybe something went wrong. She came back at Keeneland in the grade 3 Beaumont, again 7 furlongs, looked like a prep, out and out prep, was not asked the last quarter of a mile. She has this 90 speed figure again back when she, almost kind of the same pattern, right? 1 turn, 8 furlongs, 1 turn, 7, to that stretch out where she improved. She has to improve off this 90 to be competitive here, but obviously that run back in fall of her 2-year-old year, she has that upside and ability. I think she's a very interesting filly. Quadrant 2 circle, but again, that's kind of taking into account these last 2 races where she was beaten 10 lengths and 14 lengths, so you can make a little bit of an excuse for. Gets back to the those better races, should be a thread in here. Let's move on as we kind of work our way through the field. Number 4, Full House, ran last at Aqueduct Gazelle grade 2 race, had some traffic, trouble minus. So what that means is that she wasn't tight on the first turn, did have to steady, but had a perfect trip after that. So the trouble minus just means that while there was trouble, overall it didn't affect anything. Had a free trip save, so everything perfect from there. Speed figure wise has to improve. 87, we kind of go 3 back. Would have to move forward off that. Easy lead lone. We know that trip is probably not likely given the contention and the speed rating in here. So another horse that likes to be forwardly placed. She is in quadrant 1 as a circle, so not favorable just from a pace perspective, looks like, and also speed figure, and maybe even a little bit class. Looks a little bit below in order to kind of step up here. Number 5, Lights of Medina. She's an interesting filly too, 1-2 for Todd Pletcher. She's been running locally, so she's making her 3rd start off a layoff. Broke her maiden, again, 1 turn at Laurel. Backed it up with a win over a sloppy track. This was a small field. It was only a 4-horse field. Got a good ride, stayed in contact with the front runner. I don't think she's necessarily a pressing type. I think she's a little bit more versatile. She can stalk, but because there was only 4 horses in the race, she did kind of have to get pushed a little bit to not let the front runner, who ended up finishing second, just be able to walk on the front end. So I liked what she showed. As far as speed figure, she is making a positive progression. This figure here earned in the slop, and also for the distance, it's a 100, but it is flagged. Because of both those factors, the conditions were changing throughout the day. So she is moving forward, but it's not a figure I would necessarily say bounce off of. I just think it's, best we could given those conditions. As far as the plot goes, again, we saw that positive ROI with horses that are in quadrant 3 as a square. We know that she can finish. I think that it would be hard to toss her just kind of based on those factors. Consider her a contender in here. Number 6, one of 2 for Cassie. I know she's cross-entered in a 1-turn race earlier on the Friday card, so we'll just kind of have to wait and see where she shows up. Covered trip in the Fairgrounds Oaks, extended comment here. 2-wide trip, it was undercover. Did warm up, close, flow, and gallop. So she had some pace. She had some pace to run at. Let me pull her up on the dev grid. We can kind of look at those numbers here and see average pace early, average Fairgrounds Oaks, kind of average early. So she will be coming from off the pace. Let's kind of see where she goes back to as far as the plot. Number 6, circle in quadrant 4. We've got the muddy race. She does have to improve big time. Those being in 83. I'm kind of thinking that they're going to run in the 1-turn race. I think it's a Miss Preakness. She does end up here, maybe an underneath threat, just kind of picking up pieces, but again, would have to move forward quite a bit to be a factor as far as the win end. Number 7, Mona. This is a horse. It's also a quadrant 3 square. The other one for Todd Pletcher, lightly raced, making her 3rd start. All of her starts, both those starts were at 2-turn routes. Tampa ran a B- race at Tampa. This was against Older, even debut. So granted, that is versus Older in March. I think that has to be factored in. Improved, got a perfect trip at Keeneland. Another one that's going to have to take another step forward. Tends to be more of a pressing type, where I think the 5 has a little bit more versatility. Seems like Mona wants to be somewhat forwardly placed, but she is a square, so I think that does help her. Again, lightly raced, is facing winners for the first time, is facing graded stakes for the first time. So those are 2 questions, 3 questions really, that has to be answered with her. And of course, she's been bet in both of her starts, so not likely to get that much of a price on her. The number 8, Torrent, she's coming in from Oaklawn, another one that's got some foundation. She was at Saratoga. Saratoga made her debut, so again, stretch improve, broke a little bit slow, just kind of move forward. It's kind of an interesting race here at Keeneland around 1 turn, which she was against the flow, but did have a bias and then no finish. Does want to be forwardly placed, free trip, perfect. Last 2 races, 2 turns, kind of C+, C+. That's, where speed figures are going forward, but then you have to think about where she fits on in class. She's gonna have to improve big time. Speed figure wise, 91 probably fits her in with a lot of these top tier. We'll go through a speed figure sort, and again, you can kind of cycle back to this Keeneland race that she does perhaps have a move forward. Let's kind of look and see where trip is for her. Circle in quadrant 2, you would want to see a little bit more finish. Kind of a chasing trip. I don't know if that's going to produce enough kick. Let's kind of see if there's any type of paces that she's run at, that she's been sort of against it, that maybe that would signal that she has more of a kick. Trying to make a run, slow paces. So maybe a little bit of flow excuse in here, that she was off the pace early under somewhat slow races, and then chased average race when she broke her maiden around 2 turns. Sorry, faced winners for the first time around 2 turns, and was chasing the pace somewhat early in these stake races. So she's a little bit interesting in here. Speed figure wise fits, has to step forward from a class perspective, but I think based on these last 2 efforts is probably going to be a pretty solid price. You can make a case for her. Number 9, Summer Luck. Didn't draw into the Kentucky Oaks. Back at Keeneland, the Ashland grade 1. Bothered at the start and does have an improve. Let's pull up the note on... I know I'm working on both grids here. We are still kind of figuring out all the kinks to the new grid, but it's coming along awesome, and hopefully we'll get that out to you guys soon. Struggled after the poor break, never could find a good running position, capable of much better, and sort of the same thing happened down at Gulfstream. A horse that kind of gave back-to-back improves, where it was just, things just didn't go her way, and she just showed a lot more run than these running lines suggest. There's definitely ability there. She always comes running. Will be trip dependent. I believe she's square in quadrant 4. 9 and 10 are kind of right on top of each other, but square on quadrant 4, she will be running on at the end. She does have more upside. B in a grade 2, that somewhat figures on class. C plus in a grade 1 plus improve, that would definitely fit her in there. I'd consider her being a contender, but again, pace is going to be a factor. Number 10, Actress. Interesting, we've got a maiden. She's making her 3rd start. Ambitiously placed, similar to number 1 we talked about earlier. She's got to sort of face this level of competition for the first time while also making that first start at a route. She showed ability in both those starts. I thought this debut was awesome, earning a B on debut, better than look, close, big gallop out. Thought she was a little bit green in this race, moved a little bit early, and then kind of green the stretch, lugged in a little bit. Still figuring it out, but there is some talent there. She would really, speed figure wise, she's got to take another step forward in order to do that. But again, kind of a tall task for her. Looking for that first win, first route, first graded stake race. I'd probably make a best case for her as an underneath. I do like her as a filly. Appreciate them also liking that, knowing that she has some talent and placing her ambitiously here. I guess that's a sign of confidence. But from a gambling perspective, there are still a few questions. Rounding out this field, the number 11, Yorkie Poo Princess. Running an Aqueduct, Naira circuit, all of her career. Biggest thing with her, she went on kind of this tear, putting some races together. The Gazelle, pretty disappointing C-free, but she is getting Lasix for the first time, so maybe she bled. Maybe there was something that went on there. Again, all these races, that mid-80s, she's really got to move forward. Probably low 90s is sort of what I'm looking for. I'm kind of seeing horses that are just kind of struggling to get to that 90, but they're all horses that are lightly raced and on the improve, so I think they're kind of cycling forward. We'd have to see her move forward 10 points when she's kind of never really broke through. Again, drawn in that 11 post, wants to be forwardly placed, is going to have to be used early, and I just don't see her surviving the war with these other horses up front, contesting a fast pace. So she's a bit of a toss for me. I do want to go back and do kind of a speed figure sort. I think this sort of helps out a little bit just to see if there's any horse that's worth a mention or anything that we want to kind of talk about. Lights of Medina, of course, we talked about why that 100 is what it is. Two being probably a spurner, even though it's a pretty solid figure. One stretching out for the first time. Torrent made a pretty decent case for her, as far as kind of having a little bit more upside, chasing those fast paces early. Actress still lightly raced, possibly underneath. Dancing Rags again. I'm kind of leaning more towards her. I think if she's a square price, probably a good key in the spot. Mona down here again, square in quadrant 3. Lightly race type, looking to take a step forward. So again, some good preliminary information here. Still waiting on morning lines, and of course, if anything scratches and changes, the plot will We'll update that on race day. Covering this race here, let's look forward to the race on Thursday. We'll cover Preakness, sort of go through horse by horse, talk about some of the trips in the Derby, talk about Always Dreaming coming in. Looks to be a pretty heavy favorite in this spot. Thanks again for watching. Please support Optics EQ. Check out that weekend package, $50 again, all 3 days, all this information. Save you guys tons of time, lots of replay work. Any questions, leave them in the comments. I love reading them. You guys bring really good insight. And again, of course, follow the channel, follow Twitter, and